Good morning. All right. Well, to be honest, I was kind of worried about this conference because I used to be a developer a long time ago when I had hair. I was a developer, but now I'm not a developer anymore. So this talk is not about technology. And I was thinking yesterday, well, how to talk about something that is not technology in a technology conference and get people to stay in the room. Well, so I decided to tell you a story. Maybe you like this story about reflecting on what's the purpose of software, right? So what is the ultimate result? Not about the tool itself, but what do we use the tool for? And as you've seen in the video, I was in Peru last week. That's why I have this, like raccoon face, right? I change time zones every month or every 2 months maximum. And that made me love these kind of beautiful machines, right? Does any of you know this specific airplane? The 737 MAX? Who knows this? Yeah. Well, actually, it's a very sad story. It's a very sad story. In uh, in October last year, one of these planes crashed in Indonesia, Jakarta, right after 30 minutes. They take off, and it was because of a software problem. And later this year, in October 2019, the same airplane, the same model, crashed in Ethiopia. And it was because of the same software problem. Well, so what exactly happened to these airplanes? Well, Boeing wanted to compete with Airbus, the other company that produce planes and is really big, and they come up with a very good idea, which is let's put in the 737 models a new engine, which is bigger, and it will help the airplanes reduce their fuel consumption by 14%. The only problem though is that this engine is slightly bigger, so they need to reposition it according to the wings. And that changed the dynamics of the airplane. And therefore, apparently, when the pilot is taking off, it might change the angle of the plane and can lead to a stall, right? Because of the position of the engines. Well, engineers came with a solution for that. The solution was this system called MCAS. It's actually a very simple idea, very good idea. Well, when the airplane is risking to stall because the angle change, this software would use some sensors to change the angle of the airplane automatically without any intervention of the pilot. Well, and this is also a very good selling argument, right? Because you can tell you're flying the airlines, just you don't need to retrain your pilot. You don't need to stop anything. You don't need to take time from your pilots. It works exactly the same as this 737. It's a small difference that it has this software, this system that the pilot really don't need to know about it. Well, what happened though is that it's not clear whether the sensor fail or the software fail, but in both cases, in these both plane crashes, the pilots were not able to steer up the airplane because the sensor were failing and putting downwards the planes and going directly to the ground. So actually in the last one, the pilot tried 24 times to steer the airplane up because the software was keep on changing the direction of the plane. towards the ground. Well, it was a software problem. The question is, what's the purpose of software? Yeah, I believe that we create software just to make people's lives easier, right? Technology is not the purpose itself. It's just a tool to make our life easier. So that's why we have cars, that's why we have cell phones, computers, so on and so forth, and also software. And in this time, we try to make this gentleman's life easier. But instead, we didn't. Maybe the code was good. Maybe the code was clean, was tested properly, it was working properly, it was working in the developer's computer, but didn't help this gentleman here. Which made not only software completely useless, but also extremely dangerous and causes lives. Well, I wanted to use this story to reflect on this type of comments. Well, this is not my responsibility. It works in my computer. This is about technology. The customer doesn't understand. My boss is so stupid. This is not my job. I should not do this. Well, the question was what is our responsibility as software developers? And I believe that our responsibility is to ensure that we make someone's life easier. Otherwise, there's no point on writing any code. So to be a little bit more, let's say, philosophical on this, that involves having a more integral perspective of what software is, right? So not being simplistic and thinking about one thing, instead thinking about the whole, yeah, to ensure that we make people's life easier. Yeah, and well, maybe you can relate to this. Something that we need to take into account when we build software. We need to take into account internal quality. Of course, it can't break. If it breaks, it doesn't work. Yeah, therefore, it's not useful. It's also supposed to do whatever the user intended to do with the software. Right? That's what we call external quality. Yeah. Also, it should be done on time, otherwise we can't integrate this into the planes that we want to deliver to the airlines, right? So also it has to be on time. And for sure, we need to ensure that everybody understands how the system works. Well, if we forget any of this, the software might not help anyone and therefore not making anyone's lives easier. So this that we see in software, it happens actually in everything, and this is the foundations of the integral theory. The integral theory is a theory of everything. We try to explain absolutely every practice in the universe. Integral theory is applied to anthropology, psychology, sociology, coaching, and businesses. And this time I'm going to explain you how I apply this in practice to ensure that I have a holistic perspective of businesses. And for your case, maybe particularly holistic perspective of software. Because if one piece is missing, the whole thing misses their purpose. So the first concept that I want to share with you is the concept of holon, right? Every element in the universe is a holon, which is a whole, is complete, and at the same time is part of something bigger, right? It's a whole on something what is bigger, yeah? You can relate to that, right? We have components. Components are part of layers in architectures, and layers are part of architectures, and components are made of lines, and so on and so forth. There is always like a smaller piece that are connected to a bigger whole. And this holon we can organize what is within this holon in 4 quadrants. always something that has to do with the internal part within the individual, with the external part, should say external, copy paste problem, sorry about that, this is external instead of delivery, the group part and the individual part, so the whole long and the whole long interacting with other whole longs. Okay, let's talk about each of these quadrants. The first quadrant, and we're going to start relating this to business, is the intentional quadrant, which is individual internal, something that relates to me, to an individual, right? So when we talk about intentional quadrant in software, it's about craftsmanship. Yeah? It's about how we write code. We understand that. It's about having standards and following those standards. And we're engineers, we follow some standards, right? We have like some best practices in some cases that we reapply over and over. So for example, it can be unit testing, right? You know that unit testing is like for surgeon to wash their hands. Yeah, if you create a piece of software and you don't unit test it, okay, maybe it can work, but you don't know what is going to happen after. Same happened with the doctor. You can perform the surgery, but if you don't wash your hands, well, you don't know what is going to happen after. Yeah. Well, this is a best practice. This intentional part regards all individuals within the team, and this actually has been very, very important for humans since the beginning of times. We learn how to grow animals. We learn how to build swords. We learn how to do things according to specific practices, and we create craftsmanship. Yeah. The next element that I will talk to you about, the next quadrant, is the behavioral quadrant, which is not internal individual, but external individual. So something that has to do with not only with what I do, but also what is visible from the outside as a result of what I do, how all the people use what I do, yeah, and it's tangible from the outside. Well, in software, we can relate that to efficiency, right? To deliver often, to deliver in a appropriate pace for someone to use my piece of code, right? If I have a great idea and it's going to be delivered in 6 years, maybe in 6 years it's not needed anymore, right? So we need to make it compatible and in the right pace for the people who are going to use it. Well, for that we have engineering practices, and that's why we don't develop much in assembler anymore, and we use richer programming languages that help us doing more stuff with less effort. Yeah, that's engineering. Yeah, and this became very, very important in the first industrial revolution. We created the economy of scale. We create the concept of marginal costs and the focus on reducing marginal cost. And that's great because that allowed us to buy things that were not possible for us to buy before the first industrial revolution, such as a car. And we put a lot of effort on that, on marginal cost and economy of scale. We became good at this. The next quadrant, which is the exterior groupal, is how one holon relates to another holon, how one system interacts with another system, how a team of developers interacts with the person who is going to use the software. In this case, the story before the pilot. Yeah. If we don't interact with the pilot, and actually that was one of the problems, maybe we are not making his life easier. And you know who was not informed about this MCAS software? pilots. So when this gentleman tried to steer the airplanes 24 times, they didn't know they can just turn off the MCAS system, but they were not informed. So if we create software and we don't inform the people who are going to use it, or we don't interact properly with the people that are going to use it, most probably the software loses its purpose itself. So this is the social part, and often we forget about that, to ensure that whatever we build is in accordance to the user needs, and we make it together with the users. Otherwise, it's not going to help. Well, this is the agility thing. Right? We often misunderstand Agile as a methodology for faster software development. No. For faster software development, Red Bull, that helps. Or cocaine in some countries. But it's not the idea. The idea of agility is to create flexibility in organizations so they understand and react better to the customer needs, which involve a different strategy. And this is why Agile starts in software, because of the nature of software itself. Software is no more or less than just teaching a machine how to perform certain tasks according to a customized behavior. We're customizing behavior of machines, right? This is something that is not easy to do with hardware, and that's why we create software. The thing is, that involves a lot of experimentation. We need to inspect and adapt and try to understand if this that we're building is in accordance to the customer needs. And the engineering approach is not enough. We also need to communicate frequently with the customers, with the users. And this is developers' responsibilities, no product owners, whatever streams things. So developer responsibility is to communicate frequently with the users so they understand what is to be built. Show them what they built and understand if it's correct or not. If these developers have been frequently interacting with pilots, they would have understand most probably most of the risks that led to these crashes and come up with alternatives. So this is why it's so important. This is why it's becoming more important every time, because of customization. We live in the era of customization. We don't want a cheap service only. We want a cheap service that is also customized to our needs. And if it's not going to make my life easier. And this is just a coincidence that happened first in software, but it's now happening in every industry. Everything is becoming more customizable. Why? Well, because in the industry now there are thousands and thousands of alternative products to companies' products. If I have a company, I'm sure that there are out there thousands of other companies that provide the same service. So every day is a new product, it's a new product, it's a new product. So either I create the product that tackles the specific needs of my customers, or my customer will try to find another provider. And this is why this capability, this flexibility is becoming more important in business nowadays. And we are trying to create these capabilities in organization. And this is Agile. No more, no less. Not about frameworks, not about roles, responsibilities. It's about understanding software as a customization. Customization. Just to make customer lives easier. And let me also explain you not only what is the next quadrant, but also what is going to come after Agile. This is bonus. This is for free. Bonus. Well, the next quadrant is the cultural quadrant. This internal group quadrant. This is about the identity of the group that is building. It's very important that we understand that software is a cooperative game, quoting Alistair Coburn. If you're the best developers in your company, but nobody understands what you're doing, you're a useless developer. You're useless. Because someday you will leave the company and nobody would understand what your piece of code does. And that's not good. Yeah. So ensuring that we are on the or the company is resilience to changes, such as you leaving the company or having a very big change in the domain in which we are working, for example, like disruptive change, and we are able to use our knowledge to adapt to such changes. This is what ensures now, and will ensure more in the future, the sustainability of the business, the continuity of the business. Yeah. Now we have a new product every month, and we have someone who really changes the rules of the game every 3 years, such as Uber's, Airbnb, so on and so forth. Well, my hypothesis is that in 5 years or less, we'll have these disruptive changes in the market every month. This is going to happen more and more often every time. And this is why companies, I believe that companies need to start simulating more possible disruptive changes in organizations. Why? To build resilience. And actually, this is something that is also part of the software and the crisis simulation. Particularly in this case of this MCAS software, simulating possible crashes in hardware, possible problems with hardware will help a lot. So resilience is also a very important part of software, ensuring that when something wrong happens, the system can recover. Also in organization, if something really bad happens, organization can recover. Because what is going to happen now with Boeing? You know what was the impact on the shares of Boeing after this thing happening? If they had simulated that, maybe they would come up with ideas, structures, or possible interactions, possible practice that could have helped them recovering better to these kind of problems. Well, crises happen. And in the future, my hypothesis is they will happen more and more often. Simulations is the way to create capabilities to overcome those. Well, so we have now these 4 quadrants. Yeah, we need also to all the time, always to take into account, either you work in software or in yourself or in organization, these 4 elements. If you focus too much on one of these quadrants and forget about the others, you will lose the purpose. You won't get to the purpose. My software is great, it works in my computer. The intentional part is great. Well, it's not enough. We deliver fast. It's terrible. We deliver things that crashes, but we deliver fast. Well, it's not enough. We understand the customer needs, but it's breaking and it's done, like when the customer doesn't need it anymore. It's done slow. It's not enough. I know how this piece of code is done, but it's a secret. Yeah. Or yeah. This is clear. I know how it works. You know, because you are not as smart as I am. It's so boring to teach newcomers to the teams and all that. Well, cross functionality is so boring. What is that for? So yes, I have to do my stuff. I'm a Java developer that uses Mac computers with black keyboards. Don't change the color of the keyboard. I will get confused. Well, it doesn't work. We need to take responsibility for the whole. Integral perspective. We need to provide balanced growth. Otherwise, we won't make life people easier. The next concept is about lines. Lines are the possible practices that we can do in order to create or grow these capabilities. I was mentioning techniques before, such as, for example, having unit testing. This is one line, one thing that we can do to improve in the intentional quadrant. Yeah. Or for example, having frequent planning. That's something we can do to improve in the behavioral quadrant. It's one possible line there. Or having review sessions with customers, with final customers, please, not with product owners. Yeah, review sessions with final customers to understand the needs. Yeah, we don't show software to product owners. We show software to customers, to users, to receive feedback. That's the whole purpose of Agile. Well, that's one of the possible lines in the social quadrant. And ensuring that the team is engaged and doing, for example, retrospectives with teams is another line in the cultural quadrant to ensure that we have a strong, resilient engine to build product. Those are the lines. We want to build these capabilities. We want to build quality, we want to build efficiency, we want to build resilience, we want to build agility. Nothing can be missing. Next concept. Out of performing on these lines and including these activities and running these initiatives, we'll grow. Right? We'll grow, we'll improve in these lines. And for you to understand what I mean, let's do an exercise. You're too relaxed now in these chairs, right? So we're going to do a small voting with your bodies. Okay? Got it? Are you with me? Very good. Okay. So sitting means 0 point, right? Okay? Raising your hands means 1 point. Got it? Standing up means 2 points. And in standing up and raising your hands means 3 points. Got it? Yeah! Okay, very good. Because I'm going to do an assessment based on your perception of your organizations. So when you think about how good are your quality practices and standards on your organization, right? How would you score yourself? Score yourself 1, 2, or 3. Score yourself. Score the standards and quality practice in your daily job. Vote. Very good. Very good. So see that we have here, you can have a seat again. Yeah. So this is the different levels you have in your organization in this quadrant. Yeah. Let's talk about delivery. Let's talk about delivery. So please score yourself regarding to how good you are delivering, right? How often you deliver, how fast you deliver, yeah, how happy your management is about your delivery speed. Yeah, so please vote for yourself. Very good. This is different levels. Yeah, very good. Very good. You can have a seat. The next one is about interaction with the customer. Yeah. So please rank yourself regarding how frequent, good, and healthy is your interaction with final customers. Very good. Very good. Can have a seat again. And the last one. Please rank yourself according to your contribution to the resilience, the culture of your team. So does your team loves having you in the team, or they hate having you in the team? Are you contributing to the growth of your team or no? No. Very good. Very good. You can have a seat. Yeah. So those are the levels. Yeah, these are the levels. And I promise you, if you do this exercise within your organization, even though you're in the same organization, you will see different levels. Yeah, because it's about perception. Yeah. The first step for improvement is self-awareness. Yeah. From self-awareness, we can get a goal and then create steps and walk those steps to improvement towards that goal. But the first step is awareness. This is the first advantage that we can take out of this kind of exercise. So those are the levels. Of course, your level now, your software now, is not as good as your software tomorrow. Your agile today is not as good as your agile tomorrow. Your quality today is not as good as the quality tomorrow, and that's why we are here, right? You want to improve. Well, that's the stage. Yeah, that's the stage. You are now in 2019 stage, which is different than 2020 stage. Right? Those are the stages. And what we want to do with Agile, or what Scrum Masters or what Scrum Monsters and Agile coaches and all so-called Agile coaches and so on and so forth, or you yourself in organization, is try to move forward to the next stage. Yeah. If specifically you're focusing on Agile, so going to a next stage in which you are a little bit more focused or more capable on interacting with your final customer and getting capability to interact with your final customer. This is the agility. The next concept is state. What is state? Well, state is something that is a stage that happened temporarily. Yeah. Just imagine what was the impact in Boeing of having these crashes happening on the teams. How that's affect the culture. It was not my fault, it was his fault, but who is guilty here for this? Can you imagine the climate in the organization and how that affects the cultural part? Maybe they also got super scared and they start delivering less and putting less things into productions. That's happening in many organizations. Why putting into production is so risky, so then let's don't put into production. Only every 6 months. Yeah. Well, it has a temporary effects. So when things happen, it has temporary effects in companies. And this is the state. This is temporary state in which the company is. The interesting stuff is that if we want to help organization to reach, or yourself to reach a next stage, you need to force the state before, so the system experience the new state. We call that pilot. That is not so philosophical, right? So you try how this agility looks like, you try how this interaction looks like, and then once you've been there in that state, it's easier to relate to that state and get to that point and turn into the next stage. Yeah. This is what we're doing, piloting, so we get a state that will be in the future the next stage. That's why these two concepts are very important. You need to experience before becoming. And of course, there are different approaches to do this, to provide this growth, to work on all these lines and all these quadrants. We have methodologies, we have frameworks, we have concepts, we have philosophies such as Agile, for example. Agile is not the thing that are types, it's an approach. It's an approach to help organization get into a different stage in which they are better at understanding their customers. It's no other thing. This is a type. And the fact that it happens in software is a coincidence. It is a mere coincidence. In practice, because now you're thinking, okay, well, it's so cool, but what can I take home? What should I do? Oh my God, this is so complicated. Well, in practice, it's just please ensure that you have the right goals and you're measuring the right things. So ensure that if you have goals in your team, in your organization, or for yourself, if you have performance appraisals, ensure that you have one per quadrant at least. Don't measure one thing. You have to measure at least four, one per quadrant. You have to, for example, this is an example. If you establish goals for your team, it can be, well, one is for the intentional part, which is make more readable code. Just my responsibility. Each of the developers can do themselves. Maybe, for example, for the behavioral part, improve the lead time. That could be. For the cultural part, ensure that we reduce dependencies between teams. We have a more frequent and fluent communication within teams, and we manage knowledge better. And maybe for the social part, the interaction with the customers, we want to receive and activate the feedback from the customer. This is our goals. This is examples of 4 possible goals. Then we have to define some metrics to see if we are getting closer or farther from those goals. Very important. The metrics are not to ensure that we are great and show off that we are great. For that, we need to just mum. Mum says always we're great, right? But metrics should help us to improve. Yeah. So we have to define 1 to 3 metrics, in my experience is what I do, per each of these goals that help me reaching this goal. Yeah, for example, could be, I don't know, for the intentional part, psychomatic complexity, or for the behavioral part, team throughput, for the social part, customer net promoter score, so how the customers love us or not, and for the cultural part, how cross-functional we are, how many things from different part of this software are we able to turn into done work. Next element. Well, one of the biggest risks of performance appraisals is getting people pleasing their boss, right? So we said software is to make people happier, but not to make your boss happier, right? But if your boss is performing your performance appraisals, most probably you will focus on making him happy. So that's why it's a bad idea if we have only one manager doing the performance appraisals for the whole team. Yeah, we need to make different people happy. Well, this is an example. Yeah, this is actually my suggestion. We need at least 2 things that will be measured in the context of the person, and 2 things that will be measured in the context of the team. If I measure individually, I wouldn't care much about getting others being better than me. Yeah. And if I'm only measure as a team, I might try to avoid individual responsibility. That's why we need to balance that. I measure a couple of things regarding just the self and a couple of things regarding the team. And who do we need to make happy? Well, first, I need to be happy, right? And the best person to know if I'm improving myself is me. So I think is the intentional part should be measured by the individuals themselves. The social part instead should be measured by the final customer. The cultural part by the rest of the team. And the delivery part by the manager. So if we make happy ourselves, our team, our management, and our customers, then we might be doing a good work. And for sure, we get people not working only for their boss. For sure, ensure that it's a balanced growth. Don't forget any on the quadrants. Don't forget any. If you do, you lose the purpose. And redefine often these goals, so you ensure that you are growing in all the quadrants, because there are many possible lines in each of the quadrants. Review very, very often, because experimentation is the key in the complex world, and you don't know what is the best practice this time. You just can try. There are too many possible lines, in every quadrant, too many possible activities, too many possible ways to improve in every quadrant. Well, this is just to say that please don't forget that software is not about technology. It's about make people's life easier. So please take care and take responsibility.